I feel like I've never really, belonged anywhere, to be honest. I've never felt like I fit in anywhere, and I remember being a kid and, I went to school. I remember my first day of school, actually, my first day of elementary school. It was just, it was just brutal, and I showed up and they dropped us all off. And I'd been to, like, nursery or preschool or whatever you want to call it, and I didn't really like that. But I showed up to this place and I remember, like, just sitting in this room and just hating it so much. I just, like, cried all day, which probably didn't do anything to, ingratiate me with my classmates and stuff. But I just hated it. I knew from day one that I didn't like where this is going. I don't like the look of this. You know, and I was right. I was right to feel that way. I like to think, like, maybe on that one first day, even though I can't remember it, I, like, had a vision of all the years that were gonna be ahead of me, and that's why I was crying so much. Yeah, I mean, it would have made sense anyway. And I don't know, I remember being a kid and doing all these things. Like, I was in the scouts for, like, a long time, but I never really fit in any of these places. I never really belonged anywhere. I was always an outcast. As long as I can remember, I've been like that. And I remember one time when I was in the scouts, we were on this camp and we were walking around, and there were these two girls, and me and one of my, well, friends, I guess, were, like, just maxing our asses off to try and fucking talk to these girls, and it wasn't going too well. But we also had this, like, kid with us. He was a few years younger than us, and he was just trailing behind and stuff. And I thought, like, what we were doing, we were kind of at an age, teenagers, where maxing is what you do if you're a sub five or so and so on, or if you're, like, a failed normie. At the time, we weren't failed, obviously, but this kid was trailing behind us, and he was a few years younger than us, and I was just thinking, like, that would have been me a few years ago. And he's, like, it's over for him, and he was hobbling behind because he had something wrong with his foot. He had some kind of deformity or disability that wasn't, like apparent just by looking at him, but he had a messed up, like bones in his feet. Apparently, one of his feet had messed up bones, and he couldn't walk properly. So he was trailing behind, and no one was stopping to keep company with this kid. No one was helping him, which is what you're meant to do. All this stuff in the scouts. It's a whole, a family or whatever. You hear the same shit in, like, retail too. Oh, we're like a family and stuff. To be honest, that's, like, one of the biggest red flags, they can say in a job interview, to be honest. Like, oh, we're like one big family. Like, no, we're not, no, we're not. And neither was that the case in the scouts, And I remember in the scouts, like, all kinds of shit would happen to me. Like, I remember I came back to my, like, tent one day, and someone had, like, ripped up my, like, sleeping mat and stuff for no reason at all. They just went in there and they thought it was funny to, like, mess with me because it was me. And it's like, I didn't do anything to these people, but everyone didn't like me for some reason, And that's what it means to be a misfit child, or to be an outcast child, is that no one is, as a group at large, none of them are going to be interested in, befriending you, or any kind of relationship with you beyond just a laughing stock. And the same can be said for literally every aspect of life, pretty much, for me. And I just think, like, going through life, it was like kind of banging my head against the wall. It's like trying the same thing over and over again, and feeling like there was something wrong with me. I'd go through the scouts, and then it would just be this painful thing, and that seemed so easy for other people. Like, these things would be these little meetings we had once a week would end, and everyone would be, like, clapping and stuff, and, like, yeah, like, with each other, walking home together. I just go home on my own, walking home from school, and at the end of the day, people would be hanging outside the school gates, like, talking and stuff, going to each other's houses, or, playing some kind of sport or game or something, and I would just walk home on my own. I'd get on the bus and sit by myself, or I'd walk home to the through the train station, because eventually, like, the bus got so brutal. I walked, and it was like over an hour every way. So in total, I walked more than 2 hours every day, which is probably why I lost a lot of weight, because I was a real chubby kid in my first couple of years of high school. And then once I stopped getting the bus and started walking, it started to shed off me a little bit. So there's a silver lining, I guess. But yeah, I mean, like, I remember the reason I stopped getting the bus was because I had one friend who got the bus with me. And I say friend, but he started, like, he was a normie, like an actual normie, and he could get, like, these girls, he could get girlfriends. None of them were very attractive at all. But he did get them, and he had quite a few over the course of our, being in high school. And I remember there was this one girlfriend he had, and she was a really big Italian girl. Like, she was really quite fat, to be honest. She was, a bit of a bloat-maxed beluga whale, and I'd say to him, and he'd always piss him off. He'd always be like, "No, shut up! Don't talk about my girlfriend like that." But he knew, and that's the thing, is she was a decent few points below him, but that's what you got to do, right? Anyway, but she got the bus with us, and then he'd go and sit next to her and stuff. And I remember this shit, like, on the bus there'd be these 3 seats next to each other, and he'd sit there, she'd sit there, so I could have sat there and kind of been a third wheel, which isn't nice, I'm sure I'd have been ignored and stuff, but it's better than being on your own. But she'd put her bag there, he'd put his bag on the thing, even though you can put them underneath or whatever, and I'd be like, "Can you move them and stuff so I can sit with you?" And he's like, "Oh no," because she didn't like me at all. She really hated me, and he just completely ditched me for this girl, I remember. And it was really rough. And I'd like, best case scenario, I'd go sit on my own. That was the best thing that could have happened to me. The worst thing that could happen is that there's not actually any seats, because there were more people on the bus than there were seats, because the school was just retarded and they'd overbook. I don't think it was even the school's fault, actually, because people, especially girls, they put their like handbags and stuff. And who the hell brings a handbag to school? This isn't a fashion show. This isn't like a catwalk model show. This is a school. Bring a fucking backpack and shit. But anyway, whatever. These girls would bring their handbags, but I don't want to. It's so expensive. I don't want to put it on the floor and shit. So they'd put it on the seats next to them, and they wouldn't move it, even if you'd ask them to. These girls who are way older than me and taller than me, and they'd just like pick on me and shit. If I even looked at them the wrong way, they'd. People think it's funny getting like, I don't know if I'd use the word bullied, but people think it's funny getting like pushed around by girls and stuff. But it happens, it does happen. So in the end, what I did was, there were these seats right at the back of the bus there's like a fire escape, like a fire exit, and I'd just go sit there, and it's real like dirty and stuff, and people's like rubbish all falls down there, and I just sit there, and people would laugh, and they think like I was Justamaxing and doing it as a joke, and I kind of was, I turned it into a bit of a Justamax, but I didn't really have a choice anywhere else to sit. And people would like throw bottles or pour water on me when I was down there, and I would just laugh along, even though I hated it, because it's like, what else can you do, because this fucking guy didn't want to move along on his seat. And the bus driver one time like came back there, and he started screaming at me for sitting there, and like I had to sit. He made someone else move their bag, so I had to sit there. It was just awful. And I like, you don't want to touch these people. Like, it was this girl, this sixth form girl, this really ratty, like kind of chavvy sixth form girl, and I remember I sat next to her, and her friend was like also next to her, and they were talking, and I overheard their conversation, because I didn't want to listen, but I was right there. I didn't have a choice. But I was completely like, I was next to the aisle seat, and I was completely hunched over towards the aisle, like I had one of my legs on top of the other, and I was completely like leaning away from them, because I didn't want to touch them, and I didn't want anything to do with them. I just wanted to be left alone, and I remember they were having this conversation talking about like her getting her like tubes tied or some shit, or getting like birth control and stuff, and this other one was like, "No, I did it, and it's really easy. You just have to go to the clinic and they just do it. They don't even want the parents in the room." And it's just like, at least you're not going to be reproducing, I guess, but fucking hell. And I had to sit next to this shit, and they stank of like, pickled onion crisps and stuff, and just real chavvy, just fog, like aroma coming from them. It was horrible. It all got stuck to my clothes and stuff. And yeah, and this kid stopped talking to this girl eventually. They broke up. This guy on the bus I sat with, and he came and sat back next to me. And the thing is, in an ideal world, I'd have been like, no, fuck off. But I let him sit next to me again, because what the hell else am I gonna do? And that was just like rough. But I remember he left school anyway. He changed to another school, and at that point, I had no one else on the bus. And I remember I was actually getting pushed around, like literally, by these girls who were like in the years like below me and stuff, and they were like making fun of me. And I overheard them sometimes. Like I'd have to sit like right behind them, because I got off at the last bus stop. I didn't have a choice where I sat, so I'd have to sit like right behind them or right in front of them, and they just mess with me and stuff, and they'd talk like, oh, I remember they had this one game like, you have to like marry someone, kiss someone, or like kill someone, and it's like, who would you do it? And my name got thrown in, and they knew I could hear them and stuff. It was just the most brutal thing ever. It's doing this loudly in front of me, and they were like, oh, would you marry Corey? And they were like, ew, no, and stuff. And it's like, yeah, do me a favor anyway. And it's just like, I don't know, was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. And I was like, fuck that, I'm not getting the thing anymore, the bus anymore. And I got off that day, and I said to my mum, like, I'll either not go to school, or I'll walk the whole way. I'll get up at like 5 a.m. just to make the walk, but I'm not getting the bus anymore. And and then I started walking to school, and that was like, I don't know, it was a bit of a tangent anyway. But my point is, like, there'd always be these people, like, getting off the bus together to walk home together. No one, I don't think ever once in my life have I had someone walk home with me from school, ever. you know, like a friend, especially not spontaneously like these people seem to do it. I saw these people, they'd not even like walk to the same house to like hang out or anything, but they just live in the same vicinity. And I lived down this like dead end street, and there was like no one else who lived on the street basically except me, my mum. We had a few neighbours, but they moved away and it all got replaced by like a bunch. There were like these real dodgy kids who lived down one end of the street, and they'd always go on their bikes and stuff and smash stuff up, and then they'd be like a bunch of like immigrants and like foreigners and stuff. And I don't even like, if you're quiet and stuff, I don't even have a problem with it. But I'm just saying, like, it was you know, there was no one my age on the street really. There was no one I could hang out with who went to school and stuff. And it's just like, I remember like sometimes on the walk home from school, I'd have to like duck into different places just so these kids didn't see me, because they were real rough kids. You know, they'd ride their bikes and stuff, and if they saw you, they'd probably like attack you and stuff. And fuck, like, this is one of the reasons I was so glad to move out of my hometown, to be honest. But anyway. Because the thing is, like, at least here no one's going to recognise me, you know. And it was just rough to think about, you know, that I'm walking home, getting the train and stuff all on my own every day, and having to like duck into like alleys and stuff to avoid these like, you know, these like rough kids from like seeing me. Meanwhile, there are other kids who aren't, you know, any better than me. They're not, you know, it's not like they're doing anything different. They're probably not even working as hard as me towards these goals, and they have like friends and girlfriends they walk home with. And yeah, I remember one day there was this girl I asked out in the first year of high school. High school starts earlier here, by the way. Don't picture me as like, I don't know, 14 or whatever. I was a bit younger than that. But there was this one girl I asked out, and she like rejected me. She was like, oh, I'm not looking to date anyone right now. And then I remember like I got the bus home one day, and I got dropped off, and I started walking, and I saw her walking with this guy, and they were holding hands. And it's just like, not looking to date anyone, my ass, you know. I get it, like, no one's gonna go at me. I'm not blaming her. I'm just saying, like, you know, it's just rough, man. It's just brutal, because I just saw that shit and I was walking behind them and they didn't even look at me. You know, they didn't even know I was there. Just like everyone else pretty much in my life, no one even knows I'm there. I'm basically like a ghost almost. Yeah, like as a sub 5, it's not quite like really bad, but as like a low tier normie, kind of failed normie, you have a remarkable ability to just blend in with nothing. You know, all these militaries all over the world are spending loads of money trying to do the latest research in like camouflage. They should just hire like a bunch of failed normies, because they manage to blend in perfectly well and no one ever sees them, no one ever comes up to them. So, you know, and that's one of the, I'd say, like, at least I don't get bothered, you know. That's the one thing, and that's the one thing like women always talk about. It's like, oh, you know, I don't want this attention and stuff. I'd give anything for this attention to stop. And like, I know a lot of people will be like, oh, whatever, you know, they have it so easy and stuff, and I empathize with that. But the thing is, like, really, that's no better than the people who say, oh, you know, you're just making it up, you're just feeling sorry for yourself and all this kind of stuff, this demeaning stuff. These people invalidate experiences. It's really no different, you know, in some ways, because like I can imagine like that attention would be a bad thing and you'd get tired of it. But it's like, it's two extremes, you know. It's like, you don't want unwanted attention, but you don't want to be completely ignored either. I guess you want like a close, you know, tightly knit group of people who you can trust and rely on, and that's just not available really to someone like me, a guy like me. But obviously, like, a lot of that unwanted attention stuff is just like, well, it's kind of like, we all know, anyone who really is in the know, you know, knows that the difference between like flirting and sexual harassment is literally just your face and height, pretty much. That's the only difference. And it's like, I would give up on any of that kind of stuff, like any kind of flirting. Like, I don't think I've ever flirted with a person ever once in my life. It's just like, it doesn't, I'd say something like, it doesn't come naturally to me, but the thing is, like, flirting, it doesn't matter if it doesn't come naturally to you, because like no one's going to come up to you and do it if you look like, you know, if you look like me, or you know, and so on. Like, it's just like, you're out of the game, you know, you're not playing the game. You know, like, learning to flirt. Like, I remember I watched these videos actually when I was a teenager, trying to cope my nuts off, actually trying to get a girlfriend in high school. I'd watch these videos that would be like, oh, you know, 10 signs that a girl likes you, and I'd sit next to my like one-itis in class, and she'd have her like legs crossed next to me, and I'd be like, oh, you know, it's a sign she doesn't like me and stuff. And it's like, I mean, yeah, like, you didn't need some fancy video with all these like weird, you know, pseudoscience body, you know, language tricks to tell you that. I mean, I could have told you that now, that she doesn't like you, but anyway. And I'd watch all these videos and stuff, and I'd try and like min-max this stuff. Like, I'd try and be like, you know, my posture and the way I stood and stuff. And I remember actually in lockdown, when I was off school for a long time, I actually practiced in a mirror for like a few hours every day for a while. Not a few hours every day, but I mean like a few hours in total over the course of a few days before I went back to high school. In my last like 2 years, I practiced in front of a mirror, like talking to people, but like in a sociable, like fun way. And I remember I did that And then I went to the first day back, like 1st of September, I think, is when it started. Every school year starts. And we went back, and everyone was sitting in this room, all the people in our year, and like half the people didn't even stay. You know, the class was like tiny. Everyone was already in their little groups talking to each other and stuff, and I practiced all this crap, and it was just for nothing. You know, it really was. And it was just like, I don't know, it was kind of funny, really, because I knew in the back of my head, like, that was the edge of the black pill for me. That was like, I had a little bit of hope left. And I remember there was this like family gathering, and I was doing it in the bathroom of my grandma's house, and there was like a mirror on the wall, and I was doing it in front of this mirror. And then like 2 years later, I finished high school, and over the summer I went to stay with my grandparents for a few days, and I was just looking in that same mirror, and I was like, it's over. You know, at that point in those 2 years, I'd realised like it is over, you know. Yeah. And I guess I just didn't realise how quickly I'd grown up, or like how I'm an adult now, you know. And it's like, people say you're young and stuff, you know, and that's true. But people say like, oh, you're young, so you have your whole future ahead of you, it's going to be fine and stuff. And it's like, well, not really, you know. If it's not fine now, why is anything going to change in the future, you know? People, you know, people's lives work out, because being a teenager is hard for everyone, really. You know, so these people are like, oh, you know, you're saying it's hard for you, but you're a teenager. I remember being a teenager, and it was hard for me, so it'll work out fine for you. And it's like, that's not necessarily true, because the reasons it's hard for you might not be the same it's hard for me. You know, you're going through these changes, of course it's going to be a difficult time, but then you have all these other issues that aren't going to get solved with time. Like if you're awkward and you have like acne and stuff, and your voice keeps breaking, and you're like, oh, you know, being a teenager is hard. You need to work out how women work and stuff. And it's like, I know how women work, I know what they like, and it's not what I've got, so, and it's not what I can ever have, so forget about it, you know. And like, I'm not saying a girlfriend would fix me, because I know at this point I'm way too far gone for that. Like, I understand, there's no one who could fix me, you know, who would ever be in a relationship with me anyway, but certainly not, you know, be in a relationship with me and fix all the issues I have. And it's like, I don't think like I'm not trying to be like edgy, like, oh, I'm so broken, but like, I'm not, I don't know, like, life beats you down, you know, that's the truth, life beats you down. So it's not like, I don't think there's irreparable damage. Like, someone could, in theory, come along and help out, but it's like, why would they? You know, when you understand the transactional nature of all human relationships and how everyone's just selfish and looking out for themselves. And I'm not trying to be edgy. I don't think that's a bad thing necessarily, but, you know, you just need to understand, like, people aren't going to go out of their way to do something that doesn't benefit them. It just doesn't make any sense, you know. Why would they do that? Like, why would anyone start a relationship with me? You know, they're not going to do it. And it's like, when life beats you down like that, it's kind of hard to keep going. And then people are like, oh, you know, you got to keep going and stuff, you know. It's like, well, maybe, you know, maybe, but that's operating under the assumption that something is going to change in time, you know. Hang in there, like, it's going to get better, just hang in there. It's like, no, it's not, you know. I'm not saying don't hang in there, I'm just saying, like, it's not going to get any better. Yeah, and I guess I became an adult so quickly, and I remember being a kid and seeing all these adults, like my parents and stuff in my life, or my family, and other adults like teachers and stuff. Yeah, I mean, you see a lot of adults as a kid, and I'd see them all, and I'd be like, oh, well, these people are so responsible. Some of them, anyway. Some of the adults in my family are not fucking responsible, but that's another point. But I'd see like teachers and stuff, and I'd be like, oh, this guy holds down a job, you know, he obviously has a family and stuff, and he has to deal with all these kids. It's like, I would never be able to do that, you know. But then I'd realize, like, oh, well, he's an adult, he's had lots of, you know, experience, something must change, you know. And I actually remember being in this one math class, and there was all this shit on the board, this fucking, and I never got maths. I always sucked at maths, because I just couldn't pay attention in any of my classes, and maths is one of those classes where it's like, you just have to pay attention from start to finish. If you kind of zone out for 2 minutes, and I'd zone out for like more than half the lesson. I probably had like ADHD or some shit, I don't know. And I'd zone out, and I just would not be paying attention. And then like you look back at the board, and it's like in another language, basically. It's like, it's one of those like art or history or something, or English, some kind of crap. You can easily like miss some of the class, and still like you can kind of jump back into it. Maths, no shot, you know, there's no chance you're going to do that. And I'd look at this board. I mean, this one very specific day I remember, as everyone was leaving, I got up and walked in front of the board, and I just looked at all the stuff on the all these equations, and I was like, I mean, like, because that was like a few years before I had my, you know, final exams and stuff of high school, and I was just thinking like, well, I better figure something out in the next few years, because otherwise I'm going to fail my exams. And then I was like, oh, well, it's in years to come, you know, I'm sure it'll work itself out. It'll work, you'll figure it out, that's what people say, you'll figure it out, it'll work itself out. That's what people say when it's just, there's no solution, you know, they just want to get out of the conversation pretty much. And did anything work out? Not really. I still suck at maths. I only passed because of lockdown and assigned grades. If it wasn't for that, I probably wouldn't have even graduated high school. So I guess like lockdown and like the pandemic and stuff was honestly the best thing that ever happened to me. Not having to go outside for months. Like genuinely during like lockdown, I probably went 2 or 3 months without going outside once, which I know isn't like unheard of for people during that time, but it was like my dream life kind of in a way. Realistically the best thing I could hope for. And I knew the moment it ended and I went back to high school and I did that shit where I like was trying to be sociable with people. Like that was I knew like my life is only going downhill from here. And like yeah, my point is like I guess I just thought when I was a kid like adults have it all figured out, and now I'm here. I'm not like an old adult obviously, but I am an adult. And there are people my age who are married and have kids and stuff, and especially in the past, like people like my grandparents probably were married and were having kids by the time they were my age, and they had a house and stuff. And obviously, like not having a house isn't anyone's fault these days because of no one can afford one. I don't think living with your parents is a bad thing anymore. Like I mean, like I don't think anyone should be judged for it. I mean, it sucks. I wouldn't want to do it, and I do like I don't live with my mum now. I do everything I could not to, and I'll try and move out and stuff. As soon as I can. Obviously, I'm staying with them I'm staying with her over the summer and stuff. But that's not. I mean, I'm a university student. What do you want from me? But like, no one can afford a house these days. I mean, even like rent for like apartments and stuff. Like, I see this shit like New York City, which I know is like an expensive place to live, but it's like these tiny little like caves, these little like subhuman like cages these people live in, and they have to pay like extraordinary amounts of money, like insane amounts of money. And this shit in like Hong Kong where people live literally on top of each other in these like coffins basically, it's like fuck dude. But that's not going to last. Depopulation's going to happen, people aren't going to have kids, the population's falling in all these countries, so it's not going to last forever. Soon enough there's going to be more houses than people, so there'll be a silver lining to everything, I guess. Maybe that's my prediction anyway. But yeah, I mean, like, I keep getting distracted. But my point is, like, I think, like, I thought of being an adult as, like, something crazy. And then I just realized I became one. I was like, there's no such thing as an adult, really. It's just a bunch of kids who got older. No one has any idea what they're doing, really. Everyone's just making up as they go. And I certainly have no idea what I'm doing. I'm still the exact same person I was, like, 10 years ago. I really haven't, like, mentally I don't know, like, obviously I've gained experience and stuff, and I have different opinions, and physically I'm different, but like I mean, like, I still feel just as clueless about the world, what I want to do with my life. I have no idea. I have just as much idea what I want to do with my life now as I did when I was like 10 years old. I don't know. I really don't know. Yeah, I mean, adults are clueless. I remember all kinds of crap would happen, like when I was in school, like teachers and adults just doing stupid shit. Like I remember I got like a certificate. This is the most brutal story. I've told this before, but I got a certificate once when I was in little school or whatever for not crying for a whole week. Because the thing is, like, I would cry as a defense mechanism. I don't do it anymore. I don't like cry really at all anymore. But I did it a lot when I was a kid because it would just be a defense mechanism. Because like I knew people would leave me alone if I did it, so I just did that. I mean, it was really over for me from day one. But anyway. And I got the certificate in front of the whole class. We had these big assemblies every week, once a week, and in this big sports hall. And the teacher at the front called my full name up, Corey, has a certificate for not crying for the whole week. And I don't know how many kids in there, like a lot of kids, like 100, 200 kids. And I'd walk up in front of everyone, and everyone started laughing. And then the teachers were like, shh, be quiet to them, because they knew, like, obviously I'm going to get fucking made fun of. And apparently they knew enough to tell these kids to be quiet, but they didn't know enough to think that maybe I shouldn't be given this fucking certificate in front of everyone, or at all, because it's humiliating, And I think that's what I was known for. Like, people would come up to me for the rest of the time there. And I wasn't, like, in, like, really little school. Like, I was probably, like, 11, I guess. Like, I don't know how old I was, but I was not, like, young. I was a reasonably old kid for this. And it's true, like, it is true. Like, it was a big achievement for me not to do it. It's just such a brutal thing, like, just saying it out loud. Like, I'm sure a lot of people, laugh just with me saying that. And it's just like, why would my point is, like, these adults are just clueless for thinking that's a good idea, It's like the adults from South Park, the kind of shit they do, just the most retarded shit. Like, seriously, if you've ever seen South Park, you know what I'm talking about. Like, they just, like, focus on some really, like, minute detail that doesn't matter, and, like, they just can't understand anything. Misunderstandings get taken way too far, Like, I remember I was having this conversation once with my family. I was with my cousin. I was talking to her about being I guess I gotta watch my words here, but being a gypsy and stuff, and, like, would you want to be a gypsy? These, like, fly tipping ones that live in the UK and stuff, and I'm sure other countries have them. And she was like, oh, well, wouldn't they, like, they'd like attack you and stuff? And I said, well, no, not if you're one of them, because if you're living with them. And like I remember, like I don't know, someone in my family, I don't remember exactly who, but these people passed by and they heard me say that, and they misheard, and they were like, they thought I was saying that my cousin was a gypsy or some shit, and they thought I was insulting her, so they started like screaming at me like, what the hell, what did you just say? And real stern voice looking at me. And bear in mind, I was about 17 when this happened. I wasn't like a little kid, and it's like, why is the worst always assumed of me? I did nothing wrong there. And my cousin actually stepped in to defend me and was like, no, he didn't say that. And then there was no apology. They were just like, oh, okay. And they just walked away. And it's just like, fuck you. Go fuck yourself. It's everyone in my family. Fuck you. Seriously. Like this shit. Like, I didn't do anything wrong in this situation at all. And like, you can't, as a sub 5, as a failed normie, you cannot do anything right at all. You can't mind your own goddamn business without someone having a problem with it. What do you think you're doing? Kind of shit. It's just leave me alone. Fuck off. Go away. All this crap, and it's like, at this point, I don't share anything with my family anymore. I had some of my family come up to visit me recently, and I was talking to them about my exams, and like, all it is just me venting. I just want to vent to someone like a bit more personal, and not talking to a microphone every fucking week of my life. And so I was talking to them, and I was like, yeah, I'm doing fine, but it's real hard and stuff. And then they're just like, oh, yeah, that's all true, but, and it's like, it's no buts. I'm not looking for a solution. I just want to fucking vent. And they're like, oh, are you doing everything really? And it's like, are you doing everything right? And it's like, no, I'm not doing it. Of course I'm not doing everything right. I'm only bloody human. Of course I'm not doing everything right. And I remember, like, I had a job and I'd vent to them, and they'd be like, oh, you need to get your head out your ass. The world doesn't owe you anything. You got to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. You got to work. Coming from some of these people in my family who have probably never worked a day in their bloody lives, just had their life literally handed to them on a silver platter. These people went to like private school and stuff, and they're telling me, some of my more distant relatives who go to private school or went to private school, and they're like, oh, you have to work in life. And it's like, I don't have a problem with people that went to private school at all. I mean, if I could, I'd send my kids to private school if I had them, which obviously I'm never going to have, or probably, like, preferably homeschool them, to be honest. But that's not even my point. But my point is, you can't, if you're like utterly privileged, and I don't like that word, but really, like, if you're utterly privileged, you can't tell me like, oh, you need to work hard in life. That's the thing as well. Everyone's talking, oh, women, people of colour, these people that, underprivileged, white people are privileged and shit. And it's like, if I'm privileged, if this is a privileged life, I want to see what an underprivileged life looks like. Holy shit. And I know there are people like starving in the world, and I'm grateful for what I have, don't get me wrong, but I mean, like, these people's, their lives are no different to anyone else's. They're fine, and they got to make it about this thing or that thing. Oh, it's about it's because I'm a woman. No one listens to me because I'm a woman. No one takes my ideas seriously. It's like, welcome to the fucking club. I've got a dick and no one listens to me. Do I get any kind of recognition? Like, really? How does it work in their minds? I don't think it does. Anyway, yeah, that's pretty much it.